This is Creative Banter, a creativity and philosophy-focused podcast hosted by Cody Schultz and Ben Horn. Comedian Mark Mason once said, "Every status update is just a variation on a single request. Would someone please acknowledge me?" It's been just over a year now since I have made any sort of status update, since I have made the choice to get rid of social media. Ben and I discussed this choice, speaking on the reasons behind it, as well as how I have felt since. We also discuss screen time, which leads to a few astute observations on my end, specifically regarding how easy it is to get sucked into one's phone, even without social media. One alternative to social media that we discuss, which we, the individual, have much more control over, is that of newsletters. Given the unreliability of social platforms such as Twitter and Instagram, there is something both Ben and I feel should be taken into much greater consideration, especially as we figure out our plans for this year. Let's dive right into it, shall we? Last weekend, I finally got out and was able to do some photography, do some hiking.
Nice.
Which was, not a huge hike or anything. About maybe 2 hours or so that we were outside.
Well, that's good.
But still, definitely nice to get outside, enjoy that. And nice to break out the camera again as well.
Yeah.
I exposed 4 sheets of film, which I posted some teaser photographs on, like the behind the scene photographs that I do on the Discord channel through their photo share thing. But I found myself trying something new with the camera, which I had not done previously.
Yeah.
So when you have the camera tilted up at, say, like a tree, or for you, probably like cliffs,
a rock,
mountains. Yeah. Yeah. So I had the camera tilted up, and obviously when you do that, there's going to be distortion. It's not going to be a true parallel.
Yeah.
And for these photographs, it was really important, at least to me, that they were parallel, that they were true to how I was seeing them. So I started playing around with movements a little bit, with tilt at the back a little bit, and then was able to use front tilt to get my sharpness and everything in line, all while having the bed of the camera tilted up.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that I've really experimented with that at all. But what I found, and I'm curious if you have tried this at all with your Chamonix, or if this is just a general thing that happens, but because of how the focusing knob is, how it's just that one knob in the back, I noticed that when you had that camera tilted up like that, the weight of the lens starts to push that focusing bed back. Which there's got to be some kind of way to stop that from happening. And I don't know if that is something that Chamonix would have to figure out with the camera, or if they're aware of, or if anyone with more experience, especially with architecture, I know that it's popular to have your camera oriented like that, where it is going to start, or could start, creeping. But nonetheless, I exposed 4 sheets, but 3 of those were different compositions.
Yeah.
The 4th sheet was a duplicate, because on the last photograph that I exposed, I noticed that the focus was off.
Yeah.
When I took the film holder out of the back of the camera, and I double checked it, and I'm glad that I did, because it was quite a bit off, that it creeped.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if that was something that you had ever experienced with yours, or...
I have. Though I will say that I encounter it more when I have the camera pointed downwards. The same problem, just different direction. The Chamonix that I have, they added a little locking lever to lock the focus in place.
Okay.
And so it sounds like yours does not have that. It's right near the focus knob. And it's different than like on the Intrepids, because on the Intrepids, the type of gearing that they use. When, wherever you leave the focus, you can push and you can pull on the front of the camera. It won't change. But for whatever reason, the focusing is different on the Chamonix, where yes, the weight of the lens, either pointed up or down, it can, especially if you have some bellows draw where it's kind of acting like a natural spring to try to pull it back if you're, aiming upward. So I find that the locking lever on mine is necessary. I would think that there should be some sort of workaround. It's not going to be pretty, but some sort of maybe a little clamp or something you can put on a threaded rod for focusing. But it'd be annoying, and I'd be a little worried about it, like messing up the threads at some point.
Yeah, I just pulled up the image that they have of that, the focusing knob on the Alpinist that you have.
Yeah.
I don't have any kind of lock like that on mine.
Yeah, and I don't know how long ago they added that, but that is very much a necessity. And so I'm a little surprised that yours doesn't have that. But also it seems like a lot of the camera companies, they kind of just evolve a little bit from one generation to the next. And I wouldn't be surprised if the more recent versions of yours have added that. But
based on the photographs, not. But yeah.
Not seeing it there, yeah.
No. I'll send an email over to Hugo, and I'll see what they say about it.
Yeah, they've been very responsive on stuff. I was going to write them about
great.
Like getting a better ground glass with like a stronger grid on it, to see what kind of options they have for doing something like that. Because that's my only issue on the one that I have. But it's great when a company is very responsive, and because ultimately no camera, whether it's film, digital, whatever, nothing's going to be perfect. But the sort of annoyances like that, it's nice when they at least can iron those out.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, they've always been great in getting back to me and pretty quickly and everything. So I'll definitely have to send them an email about it and see if there's any kind of little, even if it's more so that future iterations of the camera that they start to implement those more often.
Yeah.
Whereas they can't really do anything for me, but it'd be nice to see that they have that feedback kind of deal to progress.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I don't notice it a ton when I'm photographing things that are on the ground. Never really had that experience like you have with yours.
Yeah.
But I just happen to notice it with tilting up, and I don't do that very often.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, there was just something to see what you had said about.
Yeah. And on the topic of black and white, so I received something in the mail earlier this week.
Ooh, fan mail.
Yes, and from a very kind and very generous. They perhaps listen to the podcast. I know that they watch the videos on my YouTube channel, but they perhaps listen to the podcast as well. So, and there's a similarity between this and another very kind listener who sent me something earlier this year. And the similarity is that they both are people from Austria. Ooh. So something about the people of Austria are fantastic listeners and very kind people. So earlier this year, Daniel Egger sent me Guy Tile's book, More Than a Rock, which was awesome. And also from Austria, a gentleman by the name of Holger, he sent me a Jobo processor, which is pretty amazing to send something that large. Holger had emailed me a little while back saying, "Hey, I have this Jobo rotary processor that I haven't used for a while. I'm not using it anymore. It's basically sitting in my basement. If you're interested in it, let me know. I can ship it to you." And so I was concerned about the price of shipping something that large and that heavy, because it's a pretty substantial unit, so far. And so, but he was able to basically fit it within the maximum shipping size. And so he told me that, they have very hard water there. So there's lots of, the calcium deposits and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so I received it just the other day. I haven't been able to fire it up yet because I have a European power transformer, because it has the European power plug and it uses their voltage. But I have a transformer on the way to fire it up and see if everything works. It's been a long time since it's been used. But I bought some vinegar and I used it to get rid of all the water deposits on it. And it looks like new now. So the next challenge will be to see that everything works on it. And if I can confirm that everything works, then I'll buy the 8x10 drum for it. And so I'll be able to use that to process my black and white and probably also color neg. I don't think I want to do my own transparency film. I think I'll leave that to my lab, at least for now. But it would have the ability to do that sort of processing as well. So
are you familiar with Bruce Percy's work? Bruce Percy?
Familiar with the name. I'm sure I've seen his work, but I can't visualize it off the top of my head.
He recently, a couple months ago maybe, but recently bought a film processing, a brand new one, actually.
Yeah, they're expensive.
A new company. Well, this one's from Dev A. And he's been doing, we've talked about him before, and he does all film, obviously, because you wouldn't need a processor otherwise. But
he uses a rock tumbler or something,
Yeah. He uses all Velvia or similar.
Okay, yes. Now I'm recalling. Yes.
Right. So he bought this Dev A film processor, which is made by Cat Labs, apparently. $6,000 film processor, but nonetheless, he's doing his own E6. So he said that it took him a bit of time to get used to it. Maybe like 10 rolls of film to get used to the process and get everything down. There's definitely a lot to go into that.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine how much easier it's going to make your life to be able to do that, to have your own control too.
Yeah, because it would also give me the reason I haven't had much confidence in shooting black and white is that all of my own attempts at developing in the past have not been good. And so as a result, I just haven't really wanted to take it too seriously, because I know it just, it's like rolling the dice in terms of how's this one going to turn out. And so I think having this unit, assuming everything fires up, everything works, it would give me the confidence to work a bit more with black and white, which at the same time, I think would encourage me to do more local photography, more local shooting, experimenting more, and all that sort of stuff. So I am looking forward to seeing how that all works out. The power transformer is supposed to arrive today. And so I'll at least be able to power it up, see if all the motors work, see if the pumps work, because there's a lot of moving parts to it. But definitely looking forward to seeing how everything works out, and perhaps this giving me that confidence to give black and white a little more of a serious consideration.
So where do you have that set up right now, or where do you plan on setting that up? Because I know that room for you has always been kind of iffy.
Yeah. So currently it's sitting in the garage because that's just where I was cleaning it up. I think I'll be able to store it in, there's this hall closet that is hooked to my home office. It has some shelves in there, so I can store it in there. But as far as actually using it, I think I should be able to just use it on the kitchen counter. A pretty decent workspace there. And so I'm thinking, and it has the ability to, then I could just, once I'm done with all the processing, all the water that's in the unit, for those that aren't familiar with these processors, which I'm sure is a lot of people listening, the film goes in these round kind of cylindrical drums, and then that rotates, and you have multiple sheets of film in each of those drums. But the whole thing is in this water bath, and the water bath is at a controlled temperature. And so it's all orchestrated with the motors and pumps and stuff. But once you're done, you have this large unit full of water, but then there's just a little drain valve on the side of it to empty it out into the sink. So So I think I should be able to do that pretty well. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that all works, because I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've always heard good things about those, but personally, I don't photograph near enough to justify it.
Yeah.
It'd be one of those things that just sits in the closet for like half a year, and then I tackle whatever the 5 or 10 photographs that I've taken for the first half.
Yeah. And because like the new ones, I think they're $3,000 to $4,000, somewhere in that range for the latest
Probably.
model. And so they are very expensive. It's something where I've looked at them, I've priced them out, but I'm like, I just can't justify it.
No. If I was photographing like medium format, that would be one thing, I think, because you'd be photographing a little bit more frequently, at least I would. So then maybe I could see it. But even still, I mean, it doesn't take that much work for me to develop the film in a little tank, a hand spinning tank thing.
Yeah, and I think it's when you get to, I think with the 8x10 size, it further complicates things in terms of just things get a little bit more tricky with regard to the development of them. So I think having the consistent, predictable, motorized agitation and everything should be beneficial. But I think you can get away with things with 4x5 that get a little trickier on 8x10. So it's nice that you don't necessarily have to, drop the $4,000 on a big unit that will just sit there most of the year not being used.
Right. Yeah. So in other words, it's at least roughly about a year since I've gotten off of social media.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Deleted
Time flies.
Instagram, everything. Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to not be on it like every day. So I still go onto Reddit, and I need to kick that completely because that's politically fueled just as bad as what Twitter is. So if I can kick that one in the next few months, I will be almost entirely social media free, which is very weird to say in this day and age of anything else.
Yeah, because it seems everyone is connected in one way or another. I'm curious what your experience is now after having been off of it for so long. Like, do you ever have like the urge to log back on, to plug back in, or are you more and more okay with that decision with time?
So there are still times where, like, so for instance, I'll go onto like your Twitter from my browser without logging in, or Jeffrey Sidoris's, that kind of thing. Just those are really the only two that I'll check in on here and there. Mainly because of like the polls that you post for this and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And
then there are some Instagram accounts, like Natalie Oberg doesn't have a dedicated website. So the only way to see if she's like what she's up to is through her Instagram. And so every so often I'll either do that through my browser, or if my girlfriend's over, I'll go through and onto hers just to check things out, see what's going on, kind of deal. But really throughout the week, I don't bother much with it. I just don't care. I'm keeping so busy with other things that I'm very glad to not be on it, because I know that being on it was so bad for me mentally.
Yeah.
And it just becomes like a sort of rat race. Like,
it definitely is.
Who can get the most likes, who can get the most comments and all of this. My work especially is not it's not the kind of work that you see being really popular on social media, because it's that more quiet, intimate work, and it's black and white.
Yeah.
People don't go on to social media and when they're on social media, they're going through and they're double clicking at the things that are really grabbing their attention right then and there. Real quick reactions. It's not like you're going through it. Like with Nature Photographers Network, you can sit there for a half hour and scroll through, and you're taking the time to actually look at each photograph that really catches your attention, or some that don't, because you're interested in it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's more deliberate. So not being on social media has definitely helped in that aspect, and kind of getting that time back that otherwise would just be sucked into it. And like I said, I still need to kick Reddit completely. But other than that, once I'm done with that, I'll be almost completely free from social media's grip.
Because I think there's a lot of people listening to this that, in hearing you say that you've been off social media for so long, they're probably quite jealous of the fact that you've been able to do that, because that is a very difficult thing to do. It becomes a necessity oftentimes, like for me, in order to earn a living from this, it does become a necessity, because that's just a way that you let people know, if there's, like when I have the print portfolios, the pre-orders, that kind of thing.
I don't think it's as much of a necessity as what people make it out to be. Because you look at, like, so today I was listening to a podcast. Tim Ferriss was interviewing James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about book launch and all this other kind of thing. And the venues that were used in order to promote the book. And the top two that they were saying were podcasts and newsletters, in reverse order. So newsletters, according to James, were so drastically important. So if you can build up your newsletter, and speaking of which, I just got one from Sarah Marino and Ron. But if you can build up your newsletter, that's a place that you control. So you control that entirely. Whereas with social media, you have no idea who's going to see it. And you hear about that all the time. The algorithms just completely abolishing any kind of reach that you may have. So I think, yes, there are certain aspects of social media that are good in terms of running a business. But on the other side, I think it's so much more important to build up a newsletter instead, that something that you have control over, where no one's going to be able to take that away from you.
And I agree about the importance of a newsletter. It was actually through a conversation with Thomas Heaton, this is probably back in 2018, that he was saying how, it's very important to have the newsletter. And I started one just after that. And it's mostly for announcements of products and stuff. I don't really do the like informational newsletter type stuff, because for me that part is a bit more difficult. But I will say, if I look at, like, let's say, for example, when I have the print portfolio pre-order, that's a lot of P's there. When I have the print portfolio pre-order, I send out a email to the newsletter, and then a little bit later I send out just to mention it in some stories on Instagram. And I find that it's a very equivalent bump in traffic in either case. And there'll also be some things that I'll post on whether it's on Twitter or whether it's in a story on Instagram. Very rarely a post, but as part of a story. I'll post stuff there that doesn't quite reach the level of me wanting to annoy people with a newsletter. And I find that also gets a pretty good reaction. Like for last week, I announced that I'm probably going to do a bit of an increase to my ebooks in terms of the price, just like $5 or so. And said, this, if you've been on the fence about ordering them, they're going to go up a little bit in about a week. And, and then a lot of people saw that and went ahead and bought some of them. But I didn't want to send out a newsletter for that. But I just find that in my own experience, I feel it's about equal between social media and the newsletter. Though perhaps that also speaks to the fact that I'm just not, consistently sending out a newsletter and using it the same way that perhaps other people are.
Why do you feel as though sending out an email or a newsletter would be annoying, whereas sending out like a story or a post on social media isn't?
I think just invading someone's email box, and from the standpoint that when I send out the emails, I know many people are happy to see them because they're looking forward to ordering the latest, print portfolio and such. But I know that, when I send that out, it's something sent out in my own personal best interest. It's not necessarily something being sent out in the person who's receiving it best interest. It's not like that email is accompanied with, 7 tips and tricks to produce amazing, epic landscape photography like you've never seen before in your entire life. Yeah, I don't have that sort of educational information in there as well. It's more of just like a product announcement. So
But I
feel
don't
like
think people sign up to your newsletter for that kind of thing.
they do. They do, but you also see that when you do send out an email, you'll see that, a certain number of people will, unsubscribe.
Right.
And when I've done some in the past, like there was back in 2020 when, before the plague, I was set to be a speaker at one of the Outsiders conferences. And so there was an email I sent about that, and that one wasn't very well received. Which is probably because it was just maybe a little different from what people were expecting. But I just feel like with email, there's always like this a little bit of an annoyance factor. Whereas with an Instagram story, especially if it's perfectly intertwined with pictures of my dogs and cats, it softens the blow a little bit. It's like puppy, puppy, cat, cat, puppy, print portfolio, puppy. It's a little bit of a softer presentation, perhaps.
See, when I sign up to a newsletter for anyone, unless it's very clear, so go back to James Clear's as the example here. His newsletter that he sends out is a weekly 3-2-1. So it's 3 thoughts from him or whatever. It's 2 quotes and it's 1 question. So yeah, you're gaining something from that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are newsletters that I sign up for that's where I'm not really gaining a ton from that in terms of education or anything. I'm signing up because I want to know what's going on with them, what they've been up to, if they're releasing any new ebooks, if they would be increasing their prices on ebooks, because I'd want to get in on that before the prices go up. I don't see that as any more or less annoying than what I saw social media stories as. If anything, I see social media stories as being more annoying because you're constantly bombarded by them. You know what I mean? You have that same ability to opt out of seeing someone's story on social media as you do seeing their newsletter.
Yeah.
So I think, especially because with a newsletter, you're going to hit a slightly different demographic than with social media. So I think to a certain degree, you're missing out on potential customers or potential followers, however you want to designate them, by not using both.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying to, every week you have to send out a newsletter, or even every month send out a newsletter of, this is on sale and this is that or whatever. But even to leverage that a little bit more would probably be a benefit, especially for this year. Even just to try it for the first few months of seeing how it goes.
Yeah,
I
do think that is very true.
especially with the way that like Twitter is going, because in the next few years you have no idea if Twitter's going to be around. So
Yeah.
that's a major hit to your following. Instagram could disappear at any moment, or they could just completely say, "Oh, this Ben Horn guy, nope, don't like him anymore," and he's gone.
Or if they ban cat pictures or cat videos.
Oh yeah, if all of
that
a
would just
sudden
be
that
the end of it all,
Zuckerberg is like, "Nope, cats are done. We don't want cats anymore. You're gone."
I think the internet would crash because it's built upon
definitely.
that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's one of those things of you want to have that control. And that's why I got off social media too, or at least partly, because I wasn't going anywhere with it. At least with my newsletter, I know that the few people that are subscribed to my newsletter, they're going to see it. There's no questioning that. They're going to see it.
And I would also think that not being on social media would place even more emphasis on the newsletter, because they'll be like, oh yeah, that's right, I haven't heard from Cody for a while. And then there it is showing up, where I think people will be more eager to open that email immediately, compared to if they had just seen you posting stuff on social media, where if that's more so the one primary outlet for communicating whatever it is you wish to communicate, then I do think that would lead to a higher degree of satisfaction with receiving that newsletter.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many people out there who, if you stop posting to social media, or same with a newsletter, you stop sending out a weekly or monthly newsletter, at a certain point, at least you'll get your core audience will start to be like, where'd this guy go?
Yeah.
Like, and start sending you emails or
Yeah.
DMs
okay?
or whatever. You're like, yeah.
You alive?
You still there? Like, haven't heard from you in a bit. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of audience that I want to build up, the ones who actually want to hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
Even if, because there's always going to be at least a certain degree of selfishness with anything that you do in terms of newsletter or social media posts or any of that. There's always some kind of benefit that you will get from that, even if it's just audience retention.
That's true. That's there. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you don't post stories on Instagram just because you really wanted to share a picture of your dog. Like, yes, that may be part of the reason, but you're doing that also because you want other people to see this. You know that other people will like seeing this. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, you could just take a picture of your dog and just show it to your wife, or just look at it for 20 minutes on your phone.
I see a lot of it as just an outlet for just amusing things. I know that some people will post things and try to pay attention to, like, try to game the system for engagement and this and that and all of that, and that's definitely a technique that ends up. I think it's very apparent, and it doesn't come across very well. There's a big thing on Twitter that has become rather annoying lately, which is when a person will say, all photographers, show me your latest picture of this. I'm retweeting all of them, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's just a ploy for engagement. I'm sure it gives that person a little dopamine hit or whatever, but it's basically as a way of trying to game the system to try to increase their own engagement, their own follower count, but at the expense, not at the expense necessarily, but everyone else doesn't really gain anything in the process. And that sort of stuff, I think, is pretty transparent to see right through. And it might lead to some sort of short-term gain, but it's not going to, it's just going to get lots of people to mute them is what it amounts to, really.
Yeah. Facebook's been the only one that's been weird to be off of, I think, which is kind of weird to say because, like, it's really old in comparison to everything else that we're on.
Is it because of more of a connection with people in real life kind of a scenario?
So on my Facebook, my personal Facebook, I wasn't connected to a lot of people. It was primarily like family, that kind of thing. So my cousin would post photographs of miniature 3D prints or whatever that he had painted. He'd post that onto Facebook and share that. but I wasn't seeing it, like half of it anyway. So that's like got rid of it because most of the posts that I was seeing were from pages that I liked or they were advertisements. And there's a lot more advertisements, especially toward the end of my existence there. But primarily what I miss about it is like some of the Facebook groups that I was a part of. I was a part of some of these film photography gear marketplaces, essentially, which made it really easy for buying or selling gear that I didn't want. And so to not have access to those, even though I really don't need a new camera, if someday I decide that I want to get rid of the Mamiya RB67, now I have to figure out a different venue if I don't want to go through eBay.
That's true, because when I've sold camera equipment recently, including the Arca Swiss 8x10 that I sold a little while back, it was really through Instagram that I was able to make the connections for that. And if I have a piece of equipment I'm not using, I'll throw it up on an Instagram story. And I have zero desire to go to eBay these days. It just seems like
they
so
always
much of a burden.
back the buyer.
Yes. Yeah. Especially with expensive stuff. It feels like that you're taking on so much of a risk versus, selling something through, or at least, finding someone who's interested in buying, my 8x10 camera or a lens. I'm looking at the person. I see that they're a photographer. I see that they currently work with an 8x10. I see that, so like I see their face. I see all this sort of stuff. I'm like, you're checking all the boxes for me being perfectly comfortable with this transaction, as opposed to just kind of a nameless, faceless. And back to like Facebook. Facebook was the first one I gave up. I've had zero regrets. I have no desire whatsoever to go on there, because that, to me, that just became very much just, it was so bloated with stuff. The user interface was horrible. I had no desire for it whatsoever. And so I was very happy to give up that one. And I've had to be begrudgingly kind of dragged back into it for a couple of things here and then, but then I quickly deactivate my account again.
Yeah, mine aren't even deactivated. Everything's gone. Completely deleted everything because I'm not going back.
And I think my last time that I logged out of Facebook, I think I actually full on deleted the account. The fact that I don't even know off the top of my head, I think is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. The only thing that I truly, truly miss about social media is being able to so easily share your work to a general crowd.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily get that when it comes to like a website or even a newsletter or anything like that. It's not the same kind of response. And that is the only thing that I genuinely miss. At the same time, it's not nearly enough for me to go back.
Now, what is it about sharing your work with kind of a more general crowd that you feel like you're missing out on? What sort of reaction or response is it that you enjoy from that?
Just the dopamine hit of the likes, of seeing that people actually interacted with it, commented, whatever, just that stereotypical thing.
Yeah.
Because I could get a much better response by hitting up my newsletter and sending out, here's 5 photographs I just made this weekend. Like, just wanted to share. Or from sending the couple photographs to just close friends or other photographers that I know and just being like, hey, what do you think of these?
Yeah.
I'd get more from it and a better reaction to it. But it all comes back to that fear of missing out. You fear that you are missing out on something, even though you don't know exactly what it may be. And that's what keeps so many people on social media. They know how terrible it is in terms of how addictive it is. They know how much time is wasted every day. I mean, if you really want to terrify yourself, go into your settings and see how much time you spend on Instagram. It's terrible.
Do you have an iPhone or Android?
I have an iPhone now.
Do you get the screen time notifications to tell you how long you've been online on average each day?
I don't want to look.
Because I'm curious what yours is by not being on social media.
Well, see,
Almost as
my problem is that I'm still on Reddit.
yeah,
And Reddit is such a just time sink.
yeah.
Let me see if I can get any kind of information on that here.
Because with mine, some of it is there'll be some time where I'm like looking at emails or logged into like banking stuff. So it's not like I'm gonna get it down to like really low. But I think when I had given up social media for a few months, this was in 2021. I think I was down to like an hour a day or something like that. And then I just recently got the latest one where it said it's up to like 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours a day, which I'm not certainly very happy with that. But
my average just on my phone is about 5 hours daily for so far this week.
That's a lot.
Thanks, Ben.
What were you just like adding stuff on the calculator? I'd be like, without social media.
So even without social media, I get sucked into YouTube with their YouTube shorts, and I get sucked into Reddit. Those are the top two. And then I have a game that my cousin and I play that I just play nonchalantly. I'll be editing the podcast and I'll be playing it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, if I would get rid of that stuff, it'd be like nothing.
Yeah. I think mine is, we're recording this on a Tuesday. So currently my daily average is 2 hours and 59 minutes. But that'll go up. But I definitely would like to get that down, but also it does become very much a necessity to some degree. I know that you can actually do some of the social media tasks, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter through a browser, and you can just do that at a computer. And so for a while, I had actually deleted the Twitter app, and I was just doing that through a browser, which made it a less fulfilling experience. I do have all notifications shut off for social media because I don't want to know. I don't want to have that because it's designed like a slot machine in a casino to try to kind of get you going back to it.
I have my notifications off for everything except for phone calls, messages, and my school email.
Yeah.
Everything else, the phone's quiet.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how my screen time goes down with the start of student teaching.
Yes. That'll be interesting.
Because I'm not going to have that time to just sit and play on my phone or do whatever. Yeah, it's something that I'm very consciously aware of it and want to make that change to, especially YouTube and Reddit. Once I get rid of those two and not so sucked into that side of things, it'll definitely drop. It'll drop by about half, if not more.
I think the other thing for me is since I work from home, and also since I go on the landscape photography trips, which are all solo trips, some of the social media stuff, it's basically my only real degree of quote socialization.
Yeah.
And so like to some degree, I think that's kind of what that is filling the void of. But at the same time, I definitely would like to back that down a bit, which I think this conversation might encourage me to see if I can get the time down to about an hour again each day, which even in an hour is a lot of time just staring at a phone, but I think that will probably be a goal of mine moving forward, to free up some of that time to use it for things that are perhaps more fulfilling. And I said fulfilling rather than productive intentionally, just because, I don't know. I think if you just try to be more productive with the time, that's not necessarily a great transfer to use for that time, but stuff that's more fulfilling, I think that would be a nice objective to have.
So it wasn't that long ago that I even got this iPhone. Back in August, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the past 8 years roughly. Prior to that, I'd been on Android. And because Android is using a Google interface for pretty much everything, they're very heavily integrated. There are certain apps that you cannot delete. I did not realize that you could delete YouTube off your phone.
Oh.
So now that's gone off my phone. So it's going to be a very interesting week for me.
Yes. I think you're going to have to check back with us when we record after about a week or so and see how the numbers have changed. I very rarely view any YouTube stuff on my phone.
That's how I am too. It's strictly the shorts because I don't have ad
even look
blocker.
at the shorts.
See, that's strictly my problem is if the shorts didn't exist, I wouldn't be on it. Because on my phone at least. Like now that I have a smart TV, it's been great like watching certain YouTube videos. I've been watching your videos strictly on the TV because it's a 4K display. Yeah. And I had done that prior with the past TV that got shuffled around the house, but nonetheless. So I'll watch that because there are no ads for your videos, so it makes it very seamless. And then on my computer, I'll watch other videos because I have ad block. But on my phone, I won't watch anything but shorts because of the ads. So now that I don't have YouTube on my phone as of like a minute ago, it's
what are you going to do with those several hours a day now?
I think when I looked at the screen time, it was like 5 hours that I'd spent on YouTube on my phone.
Wow.
For this week. So I'm like, wow, those minute-long shorts really add up, don't they? That's 5 hours that I could have been started and finished the Breath by James Nestor book.
Yes.
I have that sitting.
I look forward to hearing your response on that one when you get a chance to read that one through.
I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com, and you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.